to get the contrast. And what I want to do is talk a bit about money and the nature of money and how that compares to what cryptocurrencies currently are. But I don't know much about cryptocurrencies. I'm still learning. This is a learning experience for me, and I want to get a lot of discussion back from you as well. But I think there's a lot of myths about the nature of money that are part of how the cryptocurrency world has been formed, and I want to clear some of those up. So the myths aren't the fault of the cryptocurrency community itself. It's the fault of conventional economists, because they've built their entire set of theories on a bunch of myths. So Adam Smith, writing back in 1776, talked about the division of labour as the source of value. That itself is wrong. But having said that, he said that we have this propensity to truck and barter, emphasis on barter. And made the comment about saying it's common to all men to barter. It's never been found with any other species. Nobody ever saw a dog make a fair and deliberate exchange of one bone for another with another dog. Trouble is, when anthropologists are looking to find humans doing that, they didn't find any examples of humans doing it either. So, but nonetheless, this vision that we barter became the foundation of how economists think about trade, how trade actually occurs in the economy. And they just treat money as a veil over barter, and the idea is, well, things look better if you lift the veil, you ignore money. Money is just seen as a way of making barter easier, and all their models, particularly their models of the macroeconomy, have no role for banks, debt and money, which I think is absolutely absurd. But that's, once you drink the Kool-Aid of believing that theory, that's the sort of nonsense you can start producing, which is no wonder why they didn't see the financial crisis coming. Now, in the last 20 years, there's been quite a bit of work by anthropologists using this idea of barter as a guide. Well, they should be able to go back in history and find examples of barter. They should be able to find primitive communities now, like in the New Guinea highlands and places like that, in the Amazon basin, where barter actually occurs. And they found nothing. The best book summarising this is by David Graeber, and he says it's the founding myth of our economic relations. It's so deeply ensconced that everybody thinks that way, even in remote countries like Madagascar, which he spends a fair bit of time in. He said there's no evidence that it ever happened, and an enormous amount of evidence that it didn't happen. And the definitive work on this by an anthropologist in Cambridge ended up by saying there's no example of a barter economy has been found. There are examples of barter, but not examples of an entire economy based on barter. And she said all available ethnography suggests there has never been such a thing. So if you're trying to build a model based on the idea of let's make it work like a really good version of barter, it's never been tried, so good luck. Okay. There were some instances where it's been found. They normally were between tribes that would otherwise be at war with each other, that needed to exchange on the periphery, highly stylised, highly ritualised. But there's no societies that were based on barter. And David's explanation was, this is David Graeber speaking here, not me, that in that sort of society, given that the examples of barter were found were where there were ritualised ways of doing exchange to prevent warfare breaking out between neighbouring hostile tribes, he said any society that was actually based on barter itself would be similar. We're about to kill each other. We managed not to do so forever. We're not talking about America, obviously. So he said barter does occur. I imagine people have been to machine component swaps meetings and things like that. They do happen. But in that case, they're things where you're not going to have an ongoing relationship. Once you've swapped a motherboard for a GPU unit, you're not going to see the person you did the swap with again. It's not a society. And intriguingly, one of the classic examples of an ancient civilization is this island called Yap. You think the name is a joke, but it's actually genuine. Tiny, 100 square kilometres. Today's population is about 11,000 people. I don't know what it was back when it was first rediscovered in the late 1800s. But that was somebody where the economy simply had three commodities, which seems ridiculously simple. Fish, coconuts and sea cucumber. That was it. Exciting life, eh? I imagine they did other things in their spare time apart from eat. Now, the anthropologists looking at this back in the 1800s thought that it would have to be simple barter. There's only three commodities. In fact, it wasn't. It had a monetary system. And the monetary system, which is quite crazy when you think how on earth did this happen, but it worked. There were stone wheels between 1 foot and 12 foot in diameter. Okay? Those were the coins. That was the currency. Now, of course, you didn't move the damn things. They were too damn heavy to carry. The biggest ones took about 20 people to move, physically move. So you simply make an exchange, allocate part of that fee to the person who's done the sale, and it would stay in the same spot. One of them even fell off the coast, fell out of a boat. It's just a couple of hundred, maybe 50, maybe 100 feet below sea level. They still use that as part of their currency system. It must still be there. Let's just use it. So it's actually it's a credit system, and it's based on trust. And again, the points that the anthropologists make, the economists haven't got a clue about this stuff. It's the anthropologists who are doing the good work. This is, again, more from David Graeber, saying that even gold is based on trust, because a gold coin can only be used as a coin. You can melt it down and make it into part of a circuit board if you want to, okay, and maybe gold teeth and enamel, etc., etc. But as a coin, it's only used as a coin. So the only way it works is if you trust somebody else will accept it. So even gold is based on trust. And in some ways, what you've got with the Bitcoin, of course, is an attempt to build a trustless network, which again has never been done. So I'm not complaining about innovation, but don't think you're modelling the actual nature of money by bringing it out. Now, the idea of trust is where I think our societies have gone massively wrong, because we evolved in communities that maxed out at about 150 people. And in fact, this was discovered in reverse. So I think he's a biologist in this case, worked out the concept of a Dunbar number, his name is I think Robert Dunbar, by saying, well, how many relationships can we keep in our brains given the size of our cerebral cortex? And how does that relate to the size of chimpanzee tribes and bonobo tribes and so on? And he did a calculation that said that given the cranial capacity of these different species, given the size of the human brain, he expected it to be about 150 people. Now, unlike an economist's prediction, anthropologists went out to research this and they found, yes, most early societies maxed out at about 150. Now, the reason is simply that these societies were not barter economies at all. That's obviously ruled out. So how did they exchange things? It's mainly reciprocal gifts. Think about your own family. Okay? You never barter. You don't barter at Christmas. You give each other stuff. It might be crap, okay, but you give it to each other. And you soon pretty well work out who's going to be a stingy person giving gifts, and you attenuate how much you'll give to that particular person. And you've also got to be aware of, how everybody relates to everybody else. What you get is the number of two-way interpersonal relations you have to keep track in your mind when you're part of a society, and these are very intense societies, by the way. When you've got a tribal relationship, you really know people extremely well, and it really matters to be able to trust who you've got with you in the dangerous circumstances that would have existed in Cro-Magnon times. The number of relationships is factorial, but it comes out to being roughly n squared divided by 2. So if you have 150, you've roughly got 10 or 11,000 relationships to keep in your mind. That's partly where our brain power came from, actually having to do that in the very cooperative societies, cooperative competitive societies we were part of. Now, when you got beyond that scale, we started getting sedentary agriculture and you could expand the number of people that are in a society, then that role of saying who owed who what, the records of it were kept largely by the religious authorities who evolved into the state. So you look at the early Sumerian civilizations, they're a combination of religion and state all in one. We worry about the separation of church and state today. It didn't even exist back then. And they kept the records. And out of that is how basically banking evolved. Now, to know how money works and how it doesn't work today, the last person you're going to ask is a mainstream economist, because they have built models which completely exclude money from their thinking on the basis that it's just a veil over barter. If that were true,